Perfect. Thank you. So, again, good afternoon, everyone. So, we will be starting majorly by the processes of absorption that happens with the help of the roots. And this is a part of plant physiology. This is the content that is present in your syllabus. So, we will be majorly looking at different processes related to the absorption of water by the roots, and what are the characteristics of root which make them suitable for this different absorption processes, and the structure of the root in general. And there are different forces which act on this root to pull the water, right? And those particular forces we are going to see here. And like in the last some of the experiment to show the conduction of water through xylem. So this is relatively a very small chapter, so that's when like we'll go forward with this. So, in general, what we know of plant physiology, it is related to the branch of biology or branch of botany, which are related to the life functions of the plants. Life functions includes the structural arrangement or the functioning of these cells, tissues, or organs and organ system within an organism, and the organism as a whole itself. So all of this is actually part of the plant physiology study. One of the concept that we might be aware, like for an example in plant physiology, is transportation in plant. I assume you remember it from last class 9 standard. That is transportation with the help of xylem and phloem. Xylem will conduct water and minerals, phloem will conduct food and water. And this happens by different processes, that is diffusion and osmosis. That is just the names which we are going to study what exactly diffusion means, what exactly osmosis means. And if at all we like you are back to the campus, we might do certain experiments related to these processes. So now coming to the main topic, that is the absorption by roots. So the roots, they are fixed in the soil and giving the support to the tree. And most important, the life supporting function of the root is to absorb the water as well as minerals from the soil. I don't know if this discussion happened in this class, but one of the class someone had asked, I guess it was your class only, where we were talking about like how only specifically water and mineral nutrients get absorbed by the root itself. So that exactly the same process we are going to go through in this chapter, and why it doesn't take some soil particles and other matter which is present in the soil, and why specifically water and mineral nutrients. So that we will see further. And after absorption by the roots, it will conduct through the stem or to the stem, and then further to the leaves, flowers, and fruit part of the plant. So that is the overall function. Now we are going to see two different things. One is why there is a need for mineral nutrients, and why there is a need for water for the roots to absorb it from the soil. So first is need for mineral nutrients. Now this is required by the plant, and they are absorbed by the roots from the soil. You know, different minerals, they are present in different forms or different soluble forms specifically within the soil, and then they are being absorbed along with the water because they are soluble in water, so they can be absorbed from the root, from the soil structure. Some of these they are absorbed as salts, like for example nitrates, phosphate, and sulfate. Now this you can correlate with the farming type of activity. People put additional fertilizer to the farms to increase the productivity or whatever that reason is, but people put this nitrate or phosphate in the soil so that the soil fertility is increased. That is an assumption though. It does increase to some extent, but it also deteriorates the natural quality of the soil. So, but that's a totally different topic. So some of these minerals, they are absorbed as salt. So for example, nitrate, It can be present in the form of sodium nitrate or potassium nitrate, which is a salt form, and it will get absorbed into the root structure. Some are getting absorbed as ionic form, again potassium, calcium, magnesium or chlorine, in whichever form or salt form they are, they will get absorbed, required as a constituent of the cell and cell organelles, as well as the synthesis of various of compounds and the enzymes of the cell. Now, like you are already aware of various processes like photosynthesis, respiration in the plant. These are the metabolic processes, and they need certain ions for the carrying out certain function. For example, photosynthesis need some calcium or magnesium ion during the process, or even in the respiration, when that electron transport chain happens, there the additional ions, they will carry the charge or they will carry the electron to ATP, and that energy generation formation or sorry, the energy formation happens there. So these are various ways why these ions are required or why these minerals are required into the plant. And also one of the important point is nutrients are required by plants for their growth, repair, maintenance. So in general, all the functions of the plant, as well as for the completion of their life cycle. So completion of life cycle is nothing but the formation of the seed or formation of the sapling and so on. So that is the completion of the life cycle from one generation to other. So that is where the mineral nutrients they are required. Then so no, not this one. The need for water. So we had looked at need for mineral nutrient. Now we will look at why the soil, so why the root absorb the water from the soil. Again, like a human body is also made up of lot of water. Plant body similarly is made up of lot of water. So it is one of the important constituent of the protoplasm, or you can say cytoplasm of the plant cell. And again, it is helpful in the processes of photosynthesis, transpiration, which is I had mentioned like something like analogous to sweating in human, transportation, that is transport of food as well as mineral from one place of the plant to the other place, and the mechanical stiffness. This is one of the very interesting characteristics that you may not be aware of, or some of you might be aware of. Let me put it that way. So mechanical stiffness, like the tree grows really tall at times and it doesn't have any skeleton. How does that happen? That's something to be questioned of, and that particular answer lies in the mechanical stiffness of the plant, which we are going to study later again in the form of turgidity. Turgidity is one ability of the cell. When the cell is completely stiff, it is putting a pressure on the neighboring cells, so ultimately creating a like all the cells which are pressurized against the walls of each other, so that way it creates a very rigid structure. So that is nothing but the turgidity, and that gives the mechanical stiffness to the plant, ultimately strength to stand. Another reason why water is required, like in terms of photosynthesis, obviously to produce the glucose. For transpiration, transpiration specifically is the exchange of not the exchange, exit of water in the water vapor from through the leaf like structure. So the large quantity of water is passed out as water vapor during the transpiration, and this is specifically done for cooling in hot weather or for creating a suction force, so that the root can absorb more and more water and so more and more minerals. Transportation, of course, this xylem and phloem, they will do this function of transportation in terms of tissue network, and they will take mineral as well as the sugar molecule or glucose molecule to the all parts of the plant. And mechanical stiffness, which I already explained, and this is the term which is called as turgidity, which we'll see a little more in depth later. Okay, does anyone have any question? I can totally imagine if this content is kind of not so interesting like other topics, but please do bear with me and try keep taking notes so that we don't fall sleepy as well. Okay, so now that was the basic function in terms of what a root does. Now looking at the structural aspect, push, finally the electricity is here. Okay, so looking at the structural aspect of the roots. So the ability of the roots to absorb the water from soil is dependent on three main characteristics. That is the surface area of the root, and you can again logically think of more the surface area, more the absorption of the water. So that way surface area is one of the important parameter. Root hair containing the solution, that is what is called as cell sap at a concentration which is higher than the surrounding soil water. So this is nothing but, in simplest language, if I have to tell you this, when there is a root hair, like for example, if you look at this part, the small hair like structure that is coming out of the main root or main root branch, that is nothing but the root hair, and this will absorb the water inside the root. There will be higher concentration, outside the root there will be higher concentration of these minerals and salt, and within the root there will be lower concentration, and that is what create the concentration gradient across the root hair, and it will absorb the more water and more minerals. And third characteristic is specific to their walls, having thin walls so that it is easier for absorption of water. So looking at the first characteristic, most of the plants, they show thick bunch of rootlets, or what is also called as branch roots, and like you have probably seen quite a many root structure in general. So there are several branches. On those several branches there are further more branches and so on, and even on the last branching point you will have something like a root hair structure. That is a very tiny hair like projection coming out from the root, and that is what is root hair. And why it is present? It is present to increase the surface area, so ultimately more absorption happens. Each rootlet can show hundreds of root hair. Its spelling mistake is there. So each rootlet show hundreds of root hair, and surface area of roots is quite enormous. Comparatively it is really large, and the reason is again to absorb more and more water. Now the second point, which was talking about the concentration gradient, so it says a cell sap. So cell sap is a non-living content of the vacuole. You know, within the plant cell there is a vacuole structure, and that non-living content of that vacuole, that is whether water or some minerals which are present inside the vacuole, which is inside the plant cell, that is called as cell sap. And the fluid which is manufactured by the cytoplasm of the living plant cell. So that is all together is called as cell sap. So the cytoplasmic material as well as the vacuole material, which are non-living, they are called as cell sap. Now root hairs, these are the extension of the outer epidermal cell. Again, if you remember last, no, I guess I didn't do it with your class, but you are probably aware that stem, root, as well as the leaf part, they have the outermost layer, which is called as epidermal layer. And this epidermal layer will give rise to the root hair as an extension. And they contain large vacuoles which are filled with cell sap. Again, root hair, they are also part of plant cell, or other root hair, they are made up of the plant cell. So ultimately they are going to have vacuole and cytoplasm, and ultimately they will have the cell sap as well. So some of the salts, they are dissolved in this cell sap, and therefore usually has a concentration gradient higher than the surrounding water. And this is important to draw that outside water for the recurrence of osmosis. Osmosis is again one of the process where it is a transfer of the water molecule across the membrane. In this case, the membrane is the thin wall of the root hair, and that is how the water will enter the root hair, and from there it will be transported further. And the last characteristic of the root, that is root hair having thin walls. Now it has mainly two outermost layer, that is the cell wall and the cell membrane, because it's a typical plant cell. So it will have both of these layers. Cell wall is relatively thin and permeable. Permeable, that means it will allow everything, rather most of the thing to pass through it, and allowing the movement of water molecule and dissolved substances freely in and out of the cell. So whether something is coming inside or something is going outside, in both of those cases, they will have this cell wall will allow the transport across the membrane. And the cell membrane is again a thin layer, but it is semi-permeable. Semi-permeable means it only allow the selective molecules to pass through it and not all the molecules. So for example, smaller molecules can pass through, but the larger molecules of the dissolved salt, they will not be allowed to pass through. Again, both ways, either from inside to outside or from outside to inside. And these together, they all these characters, they help in the absorption of water from the soil. Now there is this diagram which is shown at the bottom, which is of the root hair structure. So you can see this extension of the hair like growth on the root, that is the root hair, and this is at the beginning stage, that is yet to grow, that the root hair is beginning to grow. This is the fully grown hair that is being shown. It will have a nucleus, it will have a large vacuole, and of course the cytoplasm, and then two membranes, that is inner one will be cell membrane and the outer one will be cell wall, and these will be the epidermal cells, like that is the outermost layer of the root, and that way it will keep on growing. So once the root grows thicker, these epidermal cells, they are pushed outward, and the inner part of the root is taken over by that xylem, phloem, parenchyma, and so different types of cell. But otherwise, this will be the outermost layer will be the epidermal cell. Okay. Any question? Anyone? Okay, so if there are no questions, I will move forward. So there are various mechanisms, and I guess after this I will stop, because I don't want to. It's just I feel not too interesting to study it all at one go. So we will study the imbibition and then we will stop there. So absorption and
Sorry, could you
conduction.
just repeat the cell sap explanation?
So cell sap is nothing but, so let's say you have a cell, within a cell you have a vacuole, right? Of course, let's go step by step. A cell is there, within the cell you have cytoplasm, within the cytoplasmic space you have a vacuole structure in the plant cell, and that vacuole can also store certain water as well as minerals, correct? So that inner content of the vacuole as well as cytoplasmic content of water and mineral, that collectively is called as cell sap. You got it, Aditya?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this concept will we will use again in the transpiration chapter. So there we will kind of revise it again. So now the absorption and conduction of water uh, uh, like through the plant tissues. Uh, of course, you would remember that xylem is responsible for conduction of water and minerals, and phloem is not the one which is responsible for this part, because phloem conducts food material. So the entire mechanism of absorbing water and minerals from the soil by the roots and its movement through the thickness of the root, or rather the thinness of the root, it subsequently its upward conduction through the stem. All of this is result of various processes, includes imbibition, diffusion, osmosis, active transport, and what is called as turgidity and flaccidity. These are again another two important concepts, especially related to plants. And students usually tend to forget it over the time, but they are very, very, very important. Rest of the things that you study otherwise in physics and chemistry also, what is diffusion and what is osmosis and so on. So that way you may not forget them, but these are the very specific plant specific processes. Okay, so then imbibition. Now, a simplest example of imbibition before even going to this whole technical description of imbibition, like if you soak, like if have you heard of isabgol seeds? Anyone? Or
Yes.
or for example, even if we take, let's say, peanuts, or the normal peas, or any of the seed like material, right? If you soak it in water, what happens to it is it swells, and outermost layer, it becomes kind of slushy as in like a spongy or messy, I would say. So it becomes like that, and that particular process is nothing but imbibition. Another example if I can give you, no, actually nothing comes to my mind as of now. So it is simple. When you soak a seed inside water, the usually the outermost layer becomes more weight, and it is like kind of it can be broken. If you touch it, it gets broken easily. It is that delicate. Otherwise it wasn't, like when the seed was dry. And that particular process of absorption of water is known as imbibition. So, imbibition is phenomena by which, whether it's a living cell or a dead cell, both of them, they can absorb water by surface attraction. Now, like I gave you an example of the seed soaked in water, it's merely a surface phenomena, and then the water might keep moving inside. So, but the surface, the transfer, not the transfer, the absorption of water from outside to the outermost layer of a cell, that is what is imbibition, and that is a surface phenomena. So that's why it is said surface attraction of water. This is a type of diffusion. Diffusion, can anyone explain what diffusion is, so that I would know that you are aware of this term?
Diffusion is basically when something moves from a higher concentration to lower concentration.
Correct.
Hence equalizing the concentration.
Right. So can you give any process that makes it happen? Like technically
When,
you are right, but as
when
an
you burn incense, when there is smoke, and you add water, you put a drop of food color, suppose, in a glass of water, it spreads gradually, and the entire water, the entire glass of water becomes slightly blue or whatever.
so perfect. So that is exactly the how diffusion is. Imbibition is also a type of diffusion in a way, but it's only not the complete diffusion process, but it is only a surface diffusion process. I hope you are getting the difference between complete diffusion and the surface diffusion. So what usually happens is, where in this process of imbibition, the water is absorbed by the solid particles, and they are called as colloid. Oh, the perfect example is, everyone knows this sabudana, right, which is a starch particle. Now this sabudana, when you soak it in water, you can see the outermost layer is very, very soft, and then inner core of that sabudana is little harder as in comparison, not harder as such, but it is comparatively harder than the outermost layer. So that is an exact example of colloid. That is, it is a solid particle which is absorbing water, and it is not completely getting solubilized, but it is just taking the water into its outermost layer, and over the time water will obviously go into the innermost layers as well, to the center of this sabudana like material. But in general it is a surface phenomenon, and then causing an enormous increase in volume. So like sabudana also increase its volume after addition of water. So that's exactly same analogy here. And the solution is not formed in the process. So we do not, like if you dissolve the sugar, it forms a solution that is a perfect solution, or what we call as true solution. That means every molecule of sugar gets dissolved into water, and then there is no sugar at all. I mean, like no visible sugar at all in the water. That is what is true solution. In case of colloid, water gets absorbed for sure, but then it is not forming a solution, rather it is forming a colloidal solution. Colloidal solution is solid particles are present, they are visible, but they are swollen than their original size. So water absorption by the colloids is known as imbibition. And these colloids, they are hydrophilic in nature, and that hydrophilic means water loving. So these colloids, they will absorb more and more water, and they will swell in terms of their size, and they will form a colloidal solution, and that happens by the process of imbibition. I hope this part is clear, because then this might get confusing otherwise with the diffusion and other processes later. So make it clear now itself. Imbibition is the surface phenomena only. That is why it is the surface attraction of the water and so on. So this solid substance, or what is known as the colloidal particles, they are referred to as imbibants. That is one which is going to get through the process of imbibition. And the imbibed liquid, that is the water in our case, is referred to as imbibate, or which is allowing the other colloidal particle or imbibant to undergo the process of imbibition. So that way, imbibant is the solid particle, imbibate is the solution, not the solution, the solvent, right? Simplest is water. So the example is absorption of water by the seed or the dry wood. Again, in case of dry wood also, you would have seen sometimes it gets swollen. Dry wood as in not completely dry with the dead cells. That will not swell. Like if the chopped wood which is kept for years and that you put it in water, that may not swell at all. But at least the outermost layer of that particular wood may get softened depending on what type of wood it is. But in general, those completely dry woods, they do not undergo imbibition. This dry wood is referring to like just dried, like just cut and just dried, like let's say few days old also. That so the capacity of this imbibing will differ in different imbibants. That is, depending on what solid particles are present, or like seed or like sabudana, for example. Depending on that, depending on the capacity, the imbibition process will be different for them. For instance, consider proteins. Like since it is hydrophilic colloid, since the proteins, these are hydrophilic colloids. Proteins, they have polar groups, that is ammonia and COOH group, that is carboxylic acid group in their structure. So they are hydrophilic. Polar groups, polar nature of the compound. So it is hydrophilic because water is also polar. So polar molecules, they will attract each other. So that way proteins are hydrophilic colloids, and it will have maximum imbibing capacity. And compared to this, starch has less capacity and cellulose has even lesser capacity to store water, because they are not completely like proteins are at least soluble to some extent. Starch like very less, like starch has very minute solubility and cellulose has no solubility in water. So that way the after addition of water into these different compounds like protein, starch and cellulose, proteins will swell a bit, starch will swell even lesser, and cellulose may not even swell at all. So that is the hierarchy in terms of capacity of imbibition. Uh, Now, yeah, the most important features of this imbibition process, these are, first one is called as water potential. Now, to understand this terminology of water potential, what we can do is, first thing, it is not related to the like potential in terms of physics, like that electric potential and so on. Potential simply means there is a difference in polarity. Polarity again means difference in some things. It can be a situational difference. That is also create a potential. So that particular situational difference in terms of one cell has more water and other cell has less water, or one cell has more salt and other cell has less salt. Any of these situation, or more food and less food, any of these situations, they are creating a potential, that is a gradient. One is at higher level and another one is at lower level. So the water potential, or also called as metric potential of this imbibers, that is how the solid material is negative. That means as such, they only allow the entry of the water into them. But water which has maximum water potential, which is considered as zero, that means they can transport across any membrane at any time point. Again, why they have maximum water potential is because of their ability of being polar in nature. They can easily penetrate the outermost layer, and they can cross through it. So that is the water potential. Again, if you haven't understood what exactly this water potential is, we are going to see this concept in full later during this chapter sometime. So do not worry about that. So just to brief you again, water potential refers to different ability of the water to penetrate different surfaces or different imbibers or different solid material. That's what it is about. Then the second important characteristic of imbibition is increase in volume. Obviously, when imbibition happens, water gets like soaked in or absorbed, and the volume of the solid particle or colloid increases. That is, the imbibant size increases. So, for example, swelling of the soap seat or swelling of the wooden frames during rains. All of this that does happen uh, during the in presence of water. Yeah, one of the example of imbibition is actually when you have wooden doors at home during the rainy season, they are like completely tight fix, and when it is summer, it doesn't become that tight. So that is the general phenomena that is being observed around. So that is because of the imbibition process. Third characteristic is the water potential gradient. Now we have seen the water potential, that is ability of water to uh, transfer across the membrane or across the different places. Now because there is a gradient, the steep water potential gradient is created when a dry imbibement comes in contact with water. Like let's say again a water is there and sabudana which has no water, if I am adding that sabudana to water, that creates a great potential gradient, because no water to very high water. So the water which is in which the sabudana is soaked, that will allow the water to penetrate inside those sabudana molecules, and that way the gradient will be reduced slowly. So that way it's again a diffusion process. So water will diffuse from the higher potential into the imbibant. So that is the colloid molecule. Heat of wetting. Now in this wetting process, the heat released during imbibition is what is known as this heat of wetting. Now, for example, again, you take a seed and it will usually have certain enthalpy. Enthalpy is the heat content. Any molecule on this earth will always have certain heat content. Can be like less or more depend on what is the environment and so on, but it will always have certain enthalpy or the heat content. So when the water is getting inside this seed or any other molecule, obviously that heat has to get liberated or released, and that heat is known as the heat of wetting. And the last characteristic is adsorption, which is the one of the again most important characteristic. So the imbibant holds the imbibant by the adsorption. So whatever solid colloid is there, it is holding the water molecule on its surface by the process of adsorption. Remember, the difference between adsorption and absorption is very has to be very clear. Absorption is the throughout the body or throughout the cell or throughout the system, and adsorption, that is AD, that is only a surface phenomena. So for example, if you put water on a sponge, it will absorb the water, right? But if you put water on, let's say, a coal or a charcoal, it will only absorb on the surface first. Over long period of time it will go inside, but at first it will only absorb on the surface, and that surface phenomena is called as adsorption, and it is an attractive force between the two surfaces, or sorry, two substances, that is the outermost layer of whatever is the solid colloid and the solvent itself. So that is the adsorption phenomenon. Okay, so I guess I will stop here. We will study these factors and the imbibition of the plants in the next class. Let me not overwhelm you with lot of content.
So could you just repeat what